Starting from the 1930s, a number of literary magazines flourished in the region, such as The Beacon in Trinidad, Tropique in Martinique, BIM in Barbados, Focus in Jamaica, Origen in Cuba, Asomante in Puerto Rico, and Caribbean Quarterly, launched by the UCWI Extramural Department in 1949. The backdrop of this literary activity was the changing political environment after the end of World War II in all parts of the British Empire and the movement towards independence in Africa and Asia. In the Caribbean, the political changes could be seen in the efforts towards a West Indian Federation and in the establishment of the University College of the West Indies. In 1943, a total of 18 cultural bodies were galvanized into getting together in the British Guiana Union of Cultural Clubs to pool their strengths and resources for mutual help and sustenance. Within 3 years, the British Guiana Writers Association decided to publish periodically Kyk-over-al, of which Arthur was from the outset the editor. The union held conventions annually from 1944 and for a time grew vigorously, enlisting no less than 40 member organizations. Unfortunately, internal bickering caused it to fall apart in 1950. In Georgetown, before and surrounding Kyk, there was already a brilliant informal literary circle. Carter, Harris, Carew, Van Sertima, Burroughs, the Allsops, among others, who in a sense made the appearance of Kyk make sense. In other words, Seymour saw the need for a literary magazine in 1945 as much because he felt the need as because the need was there. He began in an era when everything was still to be done. Consider how much needed to be done, how many molds required breaking, how many initiatives needed to be taken. The empire had not yet begun to fade. The status of his country was colonial, the mentality dependent, the heritage imperial, the culture derivative. Think of the varied challenges. There were poems to write whose themes were Guyanese and Caribbean, and whose imagery was tropical and experienced, not temperate and secondhand. A whole new context had to be prepared for the coming generations. The work that is done at the beginning of anything, like the foundations of a great building sunk beneath the earth, is least seen, but is the most important part. Seymour, as the designer and architect of post-colonial structures of thought and art and writing in Guyana and the Caribbean, is still to be assessed and fully acclaimed. The stated intention of Kyk-over-al at its inception was, quote, to cultivate among British Guyana's writers the art of setting out a point of view persuasively, even when wholly uncompromising, end quote. The magazine was to be actively engaged in the project of building the Guyanese nation and of shaping a unique culture. AGS envisaged Kyk as an instrument to help forge a Guyanese people, to make them conscious of their intellectual and spiritual possibilities. Kyk would preserve and bring attention to the writing of earlier Guyanese, thus not only molding a Guyanese consciousness, but recording its tradition. In subsequent years, the journal opened its pages to writers from throughout the region, including translations of works from the French-speaking Antilles. So the scope of the journal was not restricted to its own nationals. In this first part of the collection, poetry selections have been made with a view to showing the development of this literary form by Guyanese. Some of the authors will go on to be widely recognized, either as poets, Martin Carter, or writers, Wilson Harris. Harris's poems were published in Kyk 15 years before he published his first novel, In the Palace of the Peacock, in 1960.
Tell Me Trees, What Are You Whispering by Wilson Harris. It is strange standing here, beneath the whispering trees, far away from the haunts of men. Tell me, trees, what are you whispering? When I am dead, I shall come and lie beneath your fallen leaves. But tell me, trees, what are you whispering? They shall bury me beneath your fallen leaves. My robe shall be green, fallen leaves. My love shall be fresh, fallen leaves. My lips shall kiss sweet, fallen leaves. I and the leaves shall lie together, never parting. I and the leaves shall always lie together, and no parting. It is so strange, standing here beneath the whispering trees. Tell me, trees, what are you whispering?
A few years later, AJS would write, one must mention Wilson Harris, a young poet of considerable power who is forging his own vocabulary and his own metaphysical system. Then, with a leap in 1883, there is Leo. Leo published 2 books of poems and won a £50 prize in an empire-wide competition in 1888 for 2 additional stanzas to the national anthem. For the first time in Guyana, there is a poet with complete command over the technique of his craft.
Resuscitation by Leo Egbert Martin, 1862-1890. The twilight shuddered into gloom. The trees stood trembling in the air and flung their green, umbrageous arms above their wildly floating hair. While sudden misereres fell like organ peals in full excess, from breezes, equal fall and swell in agonies of bitterness. The morning aged to older day and burst in shreds of vivid light, bestrewing on the lying way its carnival of heat acid light. The wind, a wondrous gloria, rolled deep through the cloudy arc of space, chord after chord, whose notes of gold were smothered in the rhyme of grace.
A.J. writes, Walter Mackay Lawrence played all the instruments in the poet's orchestra, sonnets, rondos, rondels, the long narrative, the ode, the triolet. He was master of all, and the rolling rhythm of the Swinburne meters was his delight. For 20 years, he celebrated the sights and sounds of Guyana in his verse. During the 1930s, Lawrence was employed at the New Daily Chronicle newspaper, whose editor considered him as the first poet of the land. The entire Ode to Kyk was published in booklet form and was praised by the then governor, Sir Edward Denham. Writing about nature was his forte, but there are also many odes to Guyana, notably, "O beautiful Guyana, O my lovely native land." The Ode to Kyk has the power of falling water in the concluding stanzas.
And falling in splendor sheer down from the height that should gladden the heart of an eagle to scan, that lend to the towering forest beside thee the semblance of shrubs trimmed and tended by man, that viewed from the brink where the vast amber volume that once was a stream cataracts into thee, impart to the foothills surrounding the maelstrom beneath thee that rage as the troublous sea, the aspect of boulders that boulder a pool in the scheme of a rare ornamentalist's plan. Where is the man that before thee is thrilled not, that scorneth the impulse to humble the knee, with the sense of thy majesty resting upon him and conscious of flouting some terrible ban? Who can behold thee, O glorious Kyk, let down as it were from the fathomless blue, a shimmering veil on the face of the mountain, obscuring its flaws from inquisitive view, retouched with the soft, rosy glow of the morning, and freaking the flow of desultory light, or bathed in the brilliant translucence of noontide, a mystical mirror resplendently bright, or else in the warm, sanguine glory of sunset, a curtain of gold with the crimsoning hue of the twilight upon it, or drenched in the silvery flood of the moonlight subliming the night, and feel not the slumbering spirit awaking to joy in the infinite greatly anew?
Obituary of a Bum by Frank E. Dalzell. This lad was born of parents poor, the weaker half of which did nightly hire out her temple for the next day's meal. The stronger, a passion for rebellious liquids and a love for rolling numbered cubes possessed him whole. This lad grew up midst sordid squalor, reeking stench and filth, cramming his bowels full of salted rice, leftover sauce, touch mango, anything to ease the gnawing at his entrails and to keep the lamp of life from burning low. He swift ran foul of vicious tentacles his lowly birth had wrapped about him, was put in storage till his plasma paler grew and the dreaded bacilli moved in unhindered. In brief, he bade a quick farewell to life. This lad ne'er knew the thrill of life in full, the beauty rich of green fields in the early morn, of breeze and sky and sun. His fate, but for a fickle fling of fortune's flaccid finger, could easily have mapped for him the strong creative urge. Instead, he lived a bum, he died a bum.
Poems, one by Martin Carter and the other by Wilson Harris. Both poems I regard as being prose poems because the poets have not made use of the usual methodologies in writing poems of rhyme in their verses and metric feet and things like that. So what they're doing is to use the rhythm of speech instead. They're using natural phenomena in order to create metaphysical insights, I think, in order to provoke some kind of speculation. Quiet Event by Wilson Harris. The mountains slowly emerge out of mist and cloud. This is the epitome of quiet event, when the sun, warm and filled with distant barking of dogs, rises inevitably into the mind rises into the world and exists beyond abstraction, beyond any attempt to ignore its objective presence, so that we feel eternally alive. But beneath the trees of the forest, the shadow is darker than the dim hue of the mountains, which too are shadowed in parenthesis and dreamlike, so that it is not strange they are wiped away like cobweb against the sky, when the mist is not parted like now to show their bare presence, their living hue of blue distance. Time, the killing and death of time, the killing and death of the mountains, the killing and death of the sun at high noon is the grave on flowering God, succumbed to the triviality of murder. Not yet is time broken, and the mountains are only obscured for a while. The sun draws a veil of heat like storm.
This was Martin's first poem to appear in Kyk. He would have been 21 years old.
Oh, midnight hour, why must thy time be sad? Art thou not like the other hours of night? Even though the day and all its hours had the smile of sunbeams, thou too hast thy light. For every when the sun declines and takes its couch beyond the western world, the stars awake and Venus first doth glow. Why, darkened hour, must all joy be furled or sorrow show? Hark, now I hear a wind's quick tongue outpour a tale of grief into the listening leaves. No, 'tis not like a saddened lover's poor and stammering voice while he grieves. He speaks and burdens every ear and heart. No, it's like defiance against black fate, and it is like the spirit's mighty quest of truth and life, which shall never abate or seek rest. Indeed, indeed, I give ear to the winds and listened with the leaves unto the voice, but vain alas, were all the stone gains, and not the sweet, for though it spoke of joys, its grief, my fears, its lament, and my thoughts, doth both complain, that joy flies with the life when death the fiend comes with cruel wrath. Ah, midnight voice, thou tellest the earth's strife, the weary path.
This poem is by Frank E. Dazel, entitled Guyanese Coastland. Ageless it is in time, clothed in immortality. For it has seen the conqueror with all his power bereft of fear come in his sailing boat and step upon the land. The shanties of its slaves have hovered on its edge, ere they have taken wings and flown the broad Atlantic to the motherland. Unmarked graves have oft revealed the shameful story of inhuman deeds performed by man upon his brother man. Yes, ageless it is in time, packed to its boundaries' edge with history. But time moves on, and cooling rhythmic winds, which make the palm fronds dance against the sky, will urge the tumbling waters further in to dash upon the shore. But we shall not be here to revel in this ostentatious spread of passion. For we today, who walk upon the dust of yesterday, tomorrow will no better be than those mute stones. Commingled with the dust from which we came, will true become the sons and daughters of Guyana's land, be clothed in ageless immortality when we are gone.
Papa Smith was the honorary secretary of the BG Writers Association and helped with the formation of the Union of Cultural Clubs. He pushed for the establishment of literary awards in the fields of poetry, fiction and nonfiction, and drama.
James W. Smith, Twilight. I dance upon the brink of day and try to keep the night away. I stand between the dark and light, and ere the sun dives out of sight, I borrow from his flaming rays the splendor of a million days. The rainbow in my hand I hold, vermilion, russet, orange, gold. I strive to light the darkening sky. The day, I say, it shall not die. For who has seen the night so gay? He would not change it for the day. And though I lose the uneven fight, I fill the inky sky with light. But countless eyes at night must play where only one had ruled the day.
I danced upon the brink of day and try to keep the night away. I stand between the dark and light, and ere the sun dies out of sight, I borrow from his flaming rays the splendor of a million's days. The rainbow in my hand I hold, the million russet orange gold. I strive to light the darkening sky. The day, I say, it shall not die. For who has seen the night so gay? He would not change it for the day. And though I lose the uneven fight, I fill the inky sky with light. But countless eyes at night must play where only one had ruled the day.
This poem joins the themes of religion and dance. Tate's poems appeared regularly in Kyk, but dance was her passion. She was the founder and director of the Guyana School of Ballet. Poem by Helen Tate. He shall touch God who reaches out and weeps. The poet in the valley, writing his homage with still small words upon a mountainside. Dancers taking the symphony's power, sad bodies making beauty on a stage, while lovers and dreamers and builders of words water their hopes with their tears. Without glory forever are you among men who cannot weep. Unhappy are they among women who love you, for you cannot love. O boy with the soulless eyes, in the sunset, no ecstasy. O saint with the tearless soul, how soon thy Gethsemane.
Guyana by Horace I. Mitchell. Guyana is a big brown child, a girl child, gentle and gracious grown, playing in the sun, a child of piety and of peace, praying in the sun. Her hair is the hair of virgins, green forests intact of chaste treasures, swaying in the sumptuous symmetry of seduction that beguiles and yields innocently to the wind's wooing. The ravishing rivers of her arms and legs are elegant charms of transport that lie welcoming between sloth's stagnation and activity's goal. As a salvation of her hinterland hopes, sinuous and shapely, supinely stretched in the sun of her destiny, her soul is the whole arbor of splendor, from Pointe Playa to Skeldon. Like the sun's, and her gaiety is flamboyant and fresh, frolicsome, sometimes frivolous, like the sun's. Her laughter is the daughter of frustration's anguish running wild, a forlorn, frightened child seeking specious self-expression in syntheses of European echoes, as in a comforter of progress. That's but a mist of truth, kissed by the deluding sun of disillusion, dissoluble and doubtful as dacoits of death. But nobility and royalty course her veins, guiding reins of righteousness that rule in the sun's saddle and will last till the sun is done. In her veins of Essequibo, nobility rises in Roraima altitude to kiss God's cloud cheek and stamp her proud elevation on the sky's scroll as a landmark for celestials. Her royalty is the rapture of gold's glory, diamond-studded, her peerless pedigree, which El Dorado holds in trance-like taunt to tease posterity.
A.J.S. writes, to the poets of a temperate climate, the sun is a part of a landscape that observes order and proportion and falls into place. In the tropical civilizations, however, and in the West Indies, the sun is the great life giver.
Sun is a shapely fire, turning in air, fed by white springs, and earth's a powerless sun. I have the sun today deep in my bones. Sun's in my blood. Light heaps beneath my skin. Sun is a badge of power pouring in, a darkening star that rains its glory down. The trees and I are cousins, those tall trees that tear their branches in the hollow sky, and high up hold small swaying hands of leaves up to divinity, their name for sun, and sometimes mine. We're cousins. Sheet light, white power comes falling through the air. All the light here is equal vertical, plays magic with green leaves, and touching wakes the small sweet springs of breathing scent and bloom that break out on the boughs. And sun has made civilization flower from a river's mud with his gossamer rays of steel. These regions wear sharp shadows from deep suns. The sun gives back her earth its ancient right, the gift of violence. Life here is ringed with the half of the sun's wheel, and limbs and passions grow in leaps of power, suddenly flowing up to touch the arc. Upon this energy knit to the sun, to learn the trick of discipline and slow skill, squaring in towns upon an empty map, pitching rivers to great water wheels, taming the fire to domesticity. Sun is a shapely fire floating in air, watched by God's eye. The distance makes it cool with the slow circling retinue of worlds hanging upon it. Indifferently near move other stars with their attendant groups, till the enormous ballet music fades and dies away. Sun is a shapely fire, turning in air. Sun's in my blood.
AJS. No account of Guyanese poetry should exclude mention of the Anthology of Local Indian Verse, published in 1934 and edited by C.E.J. Ramcharitala as the first evidence, perhaps in the British Caribbean, of Indians contributing to the English-speaking heritage.
It's entitled The Weaving Gang. I know the girls are coming, for I hear the gentle humming of courses they are singing on their way. I hear the saucepans jingling and their cutlasses a tingling, which as music instruments they play. They fill the silence after with their peals of merry laughter, which float upon the pillion of the air, and also ease their walking with some idle, silly talking with kisas and bujoas, very queer. Then once again they're singing, they resume until the ringing of their voices mingles with the whistling breeze. I love to see their faces with their smiles and subtle graces, and I love to hear their charming melodies. Drip, 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 all night long, this simple song kept ringing in my ears. Drip, drip, drip. Drip, drip, drip on the bed and on my head. Its dripping music broke. Drip, drip, drip. Drip, drip, drip in my soul beyond control. This music lingers still. Drip, drip, drip.
Sheikh Keen is from St. Vincent and appears a few times in Kyk. He published a booklet of 19 poems called Lubli, which was reviewed in issue 11, where this poem appears. A jazz musician and teacher, he will go on to win the 1979 Casa de las Americas Prize for Poetry.
I Saw Two Flowers by E. McKean. I saw two flowers floating on the tide, both alike in form and motion, like wedded royalty riding a throne of ocean deck with foam lace. Between them, nothing was, except a whirlpool of tears, discarded tears, too cold to mate the seamy blushes of petal. I saw two flowers struggling with the swell. One sank, the other, stalking the sunset, floated on. I saw two thoughts, two lives, two visions, both alike in impulse and conception, come like lost children over the waste of unreality, weeping and clinging. Around, eddying bubbles rose, grew, burst into stranded notions, then settled back in little, leaping maelstroms of doubt. I saw two liquid thoughts, two lives, two visions. One perished, the other, claiming conviction, thickened into actuality.
This poem would later appear in Carter's Poems of Resistance as Not Hands Like Mine, with punctuation, layout, and capitalizations revised. With reference to the silent people in this poem, the late George Simon would observe to Gemma Robinson, "It is necessary to be silent so that one hears the voices of the spirits. The forests, savannas, mountains, and rivers demand that they be approached in quietude and reverence. It is a code of conduct to walk in the forest silently.
Not hands like mine these Carib altars knew. Nameless and quite forgotten are the gods, and mute and alone, their silent people spend a ring of vacant days, not like more human years, as aged and brown their rivers flow away. Yes, pressing on my land, there is an ocean's flood. It is a muttering sea. Here, right at my feet, my strangled city lies, my father's city and my mother's heart. Hoarse, groaning tongues, children without love, mothers without blood, all cold as dust, nights dim, there is no rest. Ah, mine was a pattern woven by a slave, dull as a dream encompassed in a tomb. Now, still are the fields covered by the floods, and those rivers roll over altars gone, naked, naked lines throbbing deep with life, rich with birth indeed, rouse, turning to the sun. And more fierce rain will come again tonight. New day must clean. Have floods not drowned the fields, killing my rice and stirring up my rats? And very interesting too is the end where he mixes the language. He has these poems. He has these poems where his English is Creole influence. It's that it's English with a Creole syntax. And that one of the famous ones in which he does this is University of Hunger, where he uses the Creole syntax. And here in this one, you have it again. And it's very subtle and coming on. And when he says, new day must clean, which is Guyanese language, you know, it's that, if you wouldn't understand it if you're looking at standard English. And so that is a very interesting touch to it.
Basil McFarlane is Jamaican. Some of his work appeared in the Miniature Poets series in 1952. He was a journalist and art critic and interested in theatre.
Letters to Margaret by Basil McFarlane. Yet how live, if not by love, giver and gift of life? Faith, stern chisel of our fortunes, roots in love, is free, is flame, is not to be confused with wishing. Faith is learned. Wishing, mere reaction to dull circumstance, projection into infinite regions of the possible of an infinite will, so often a thoughtless rebel. We have invented fate, the turning world, but not the mind that sponsors its existence. Feeble mind, oh, yet our single pride, our one and true inheritance, possesses in its turn the earth and sky, invests dull earth with wonder, aims its noose at the remotest of the glittering worlds. Yet not without prayer. Is light no light, not song and the song sacred. A song is love. The pure emergent crystal of creative motion is God, who lays waste with terrible pity our bright, dark stars.
Will be Gentian by Owen Campbell. After the flood, lightning, and no dove, no olive leaf, the raven of despair goeth forth without returning. After blood, after the march, sacrifice and the burnt offering, yet where is Moses? Lost in the mist, gone, lost in the cloud on the mount. Let us break from our faith, build us a calf to lead us on. Here is no hope now. Here are all bleak faces. Here all dreams are cracked in the ground under the sun. Here all heart runs purple in the rivers under the rain. But we have found out all about mirages, and in our seasons of drear, no flash could fake us. In our deserts of wandering, we expect no pools. And this one who dared hope, suffers now, utters his last wish fainting, the Columbus cry. Give me, my men, but 3 days. Give me time, my masters. Wait, there are birds now bearing the telltale bush, and on the sea the token, the bough floating and fresh green. Under the wet of waiting, may he ground, may be Ararat, and some wait, not with knowing, but despair. Just beyond our trust, beyond the edge of the dwindling acre, may be land, maybe the fat land. Few have faith. Only time now, while we wait on the wind, to find what only the sun and the wave knew and whispered about, after doubt and drifting had broken our hearts.
And sometimes quite unsought, the memories come, by R.L.C. McFarlane. And sometimes quite unsought, the memories come, of passions that so suddenly came to leaf, the amazement and the anger and the grief, stark revelations that still leave me numb. Again, I see the expensive fruit that gleamed with ambiguous leaves, the ecstatic breath prompting the soul, be quick, the stride of truth that came between us and the thing we seemed, so freakish and so short, but what a blend we were. What could she really have in mind? Nature, I mean, when unforewarned, she assigned us these impromptu parts. Their inglorious end still lingers in my memory and attires the thinnest wisp of fancy with the sheen of leaves tumultuous, whispers the drawn screen, the blaze that burns intensely, then expires.
The 63 Beach by Brojo Bhattacharya. This gray beach, washed by muddy gray waters, rumbles day and night. From far savannas and distant Oriala, Tiger Falls, Akarai, and Kunuku. The quarantine brings her homage and her revenue of twigs, brown sand, nutshells, and feathers of drowned birds, of tons and tons of silt. And this firm beach is made. And we rejoice. We play on this beach. Firm and wide, it stretches on and on. On Sundays, holidays, gay crowds, men, women, children in gay colors, drink, sing, play, and drive. A happy, full, lively noise of the crowd mixes with the deep, constant, faraway roll of the Atlantic. The silt accumulates, new land grows every day. This crowd hardly feels gratitude for the tributes of distant Oriala, Akarai, and Kunuku.
To sustain, sometimes single-handed, the publication of 28 issues of Kyk over a 16-year period from December 1945 to December 1961 must have tried even your patience and capacity for hard work, your stated aims in the first issue to help forge a Guyanese people and to make them conscious of their intellectual and spiritual possibilities seem too ambitious. Yet this little review can claim to have gone a long way in achieving those aims.